Hi, this is Ali Arango of gamevisualz as well as littleguyscgi.com, and this is what you're going to learn in this tutorial today. You're going to learn how to show a variable. You're going to learn how to have your character go from an idle pose to multiple random animation poses. You can see him going through, well, he just went through a pose. There he's in another random pose there. Another pose there. Sometimes the randomness will make the same pose repeat. When I press to the right or to the left, he walks like he's supposed to, and then he goes to his idle pose, and then he goes back to his random pose. For the purposes of the demonstration of showing you this now, I have the pose set for every 4 seconds. During the tutorial, I have the random poses set for every 8 seconds. Okay, like most of the tutorials on this channel, the sprites will be provided for you. You can get to these sprites by going to littleguyscgi.com. Once you come to the page, just click on Game Visuals. What you want to do is scroll down, click on Game Assets. Scroll down again, and see where you see this player sprites right here. Click here. And then from here, when you click on this sprite animation frames button, you'll have a link to the sprites. Also, if you want to see other tutorials that I've done, if you click back, click back too far. If you go to this YouTube tutorials right here, you can click here, and then you can see other gamevisualz tutorials that I've made. Hi, this is Ali Arango of gamevisualz as well as littleguyscgi.com. Today I would like to show you how to set up random idle poses in Gdevelop 5. So let's get started. Okay, when doing these tutorials, I like to start off as much as possible from a blank slate. So what you see in front of you is the startup screen for Gdevelop. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on Create a New Project. We're going to scroll down to where we see Empty Game. We're then going to look to our left, and where we see scenes, right underneath there, we see this plus button. We're going to left click on that plus button. After we did that, we see this new scene that popped up. We're going to click right where we see new scenes. We're going to left click here. Once we did that, we have this new screen in front of us with objects to the right, properties to the left. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is set up our player. So I'm going to go to the right where we see these objects. We're going to click the plus button. We're then going to look to where we see sprite. We're going to left click there. We're going to change the name of this to player. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click where we see this says click to add an animation. We're going to click the plus button to the right. So we have this first animation right here. We're going to keep clicking this plus button to bring in our animations before we set them up. So for this first animation, this will be an idle animation. See where this says don't loop? This is the one, well, we're going to have 2 animations we want to loop. This is one of them. So we're going to click don't loop, which means that this will loop. We're going to need 4 more animations. So actually 5 animations. So what we're going to do is we're going to click this plus button to bring in those 5 more animations. So there's 1, animation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we're going to need 1 more animation for our walking animation frames. So we're going to click this now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to scroll up. This is going to loop. We're going to click don't loop here. This is going to be our walking animation. Now we're just going to name these. I'm going to name the random animations R and a number, which is going to stand for a random animation. So we're going to name this R1. We're going to name this R2. We're going to name this R3. We're going to name this R4. This we're going to name RI, because it's going to actually be a random idle animation. You'll see why later. And then for this animation 6, which we have set for looping, we're going to name this walking. Okay, so now we're going to bring in these animation frames. So here's, okay, we need to name this idle. So now that we name this, we're going to bring in our animation frames. So for this idle, we're going to click this plus button here to the left. We're going to go to where our animation frames are at. You can download these animation frames for free at our website, littleguycgi.com. And knows that these will help you to follow along with this tutorial. So we're going to go to Blaster Idle. So we see all these frames right here. So we're in our Blaster Idle folder. We're going to hold Control, press A. We're then going to click Open. So now we have those frames brought in. So now we're going to our random pose 1. So we're going to click here. We're going to go to where these are located. So you're seeing where they're located at on my computer. You go to where they're located at on your computer after you download the files from littleguycgi.com. Okay, so here is random pose 1. So we're going to hold Control, press A, click Open. We don't want that to loop. Here's R2, so we're going to click plus. We're just going to where the files are at. Here's random pose 2. Hold Control, press A. We're going to click Open. We're going to scroll down. Here's random pose 3. We're going to click plus. So here's random pose 3, Control A, click Open. Here's 4, so this is going to be random pose 4. So here's random pose 4. Hold Control, press A, click Open. And I said this, we already have the idle pose, so we actually don't need this. We're going to leave that blank, and that should be, you know what, we'll get rid of this. We'll click the delete button. Just making sure that I am deleting the right one. Yeah, okay, so now the animation 5 will be walking. We still have our loop set, so that's good. So we'll click the plus button. Because we have our walking frames here, we'll hold Control, press A. We'll then click Open. So we have all of our animation frames here. So now that we have these here, what we want to do is go to where we see behaviors. So we clicked on behaviors. See this purple line is underneath behaviors. Now that that's underneath behaviors, we'll click plus. And then we're going to go to these, of these list of behaviors, we're going to platform behaviors. So we're going to left click here. And now the default settings for this are fine. We're going to click OK. So now we have our player as well as the animations that we currently need to work through this tutorial. Okay, so we're going to left click on the player. So I left clicked and let go. Now I'm left clicking and dragging the player out onto the screen. I'm rolling my mouse wheel back. Now I'm holding shift. I'm going right to this corner here. I'm still holding shift. And while holding shift from this corner, I'm dragging to make this player character smaller. Hold shift again. make the player character smaller. So now I'm going to left click to deselect the player character. Okay, we need our player character has a platform character behavior on him. What that means is he can move as well as he has gravity on him. So there's something else we need to do to him. We're going to left click on him. We're going to go back to behaviors, and we need to actually turn off default controls for him. So I just double clicked on him, and then I went to behaviors, and I just unclicked default controls. I'm then going to click apply. Okay, we need something for him to stand on, so we're going to go to the right. We're going to click plus. We're going to click sprite. We're going to name this ground. We're going to click the plus button to the right, but instead of clicking the plus button to the left, we're going to go to this where we see edit with Piskel. This is a built-in graphic editor inside of Gdevelop. So we're going to left click on this. And then we're going to look to our bottom left in Piskel. We're going to click on the color selector. I'm going to go towards yellow, drag my mouse down just so I can have a brownish color, which I like using for ground. I'm going to go to the paint bucket, left click, and just click here to have this be filled in brown. I'm going to go to where we see this new object. I'm going to name this ground. You don't have to do this. I'm just choosing to do that. So now I'm going to click save, and then I'm going to left click on behaviors, and you can see like this purple line's underneath here where it says behaviors. I'm going to click this plus button to the right. Now I'm going to select platform, and this is fine. I'm going to click OK. Okay, now what I'm going to do is left click on the ground, and now it's selected, it's highlighted blue, so I'm going to left click again, hold down my left mouse button and drag this onto the scene. And then what I'm going to do is move this to the side of our player. I'm going to go to this square that you see right here, left click and drag this out to the side. So now our player has a ground to stand on. So the player has platform character, a platform character behavior. Our ground has platform behavior. So I'm going to click plus so you can see what happens. You can see our player is standing on the ground. However, our player is a little above the ground, so let's deal with that. I'm going to click the X button, come out of the preview. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is let's click on our player. So our player is, when you look to the left, you see the Z order. This means our player will be in the background. So 1 is furthest in the background, then 2 is further out from the background, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The further you get out, I'm not sure how many levels you can have, but the further you get away from 1, the closer you get towards the screen. Closer you get to 1, the more you get towards the background. So when we click here, see this says 2. So for our player character, we're going to change this to 4. Then I'm just going to left click outside there. I'll click back on him. So now you can see his Z order is 4. Okay, so if you look at his the box around him, this box, he's a little above the bottom of the box, so we need to adjust that. So the way we can do that is we're going to left click on player, we're going to scroll to the bottom, we're going to go to where we see edit hitboxes. And this box right here is his collision mask box, and this is also what he's standing on. So we want to adjust this so that it looks like he's standing on the ground. So to do that, we're going to go to use a custom collision mask. When I click that, nothing happened yet because we need to click this button to the right. So we'll click that. Now you can see these 4 dots here. So what we want to do is drag these down. So I'm going to put these around where his ankles are at, so that he stands on the ground. And we're going to move these up. So that should be good. This is important that this is blue as well, showing you that where this says share same collision mask for all animations, this also says share same collision mask for all sprites of this animation. You want both of these things to be highlighted blue. If they're not, you will have issues. So with that done, we're going to click close. Then we're going to click apply. Okay, so I'm going to click the preview button. So now you can see our player character looks like he's actually standing on the ground. The reason why he's doing his idle animation already is because that first animation Gdevelop is set up so your character will automatically start doing the first animation. So that's why why he's animating. However, if I push the arrow keys, our character won't move because I turned off the default controls. So we're going to set up for him to move as well as for him to do his the purpose of this tutorial, which is the random animations. So I'm going to click this X button to get out of that preview. Okay, here in Gdevelop, you work with basically your artwork. We want to work with our programming, so we're going to left click here. When we click here, we see this. There are no events. Events are composed of conditions and actions. Add your first event using the first buttons of the toolbar. That is right here. So what we're going to do is left click right here. Once we left click there, we are set up to start programming. The way things work in Gdevelop is you set up your condition. Your condition basically says when something happens, do something, and your add action basically says what to happen when that condition happens. If there's no condition, then your action basically continues to keep trying to do in a loop. Okay, so we're ready to begin programming. We just came over here. We are going to go back briefly to here. And the reason why we came back here is so we could put a variable on our player character. We could do that in the programming. I'm just choosing to do it here. See where we see player. I'm going to left click here. Left click on the dots that you see right here. And then we have edit object variables. I'm going to left click here. I'm going to click this plus button to the right. Basically, a variable is a container of information, and it's also a container of information that you can make change at certain times. And when that information changes, you can cause other things to happen. So we're going to change the name of this variable to random. I'm going to hold shift, press P, pose, and then we're going to click apply. When we click apply, that variable should equal 0 for now. There's multiple types of variables that you can work with, as well as multiple things that variables can do. For the purposes of this tutorial, this variable that we will be working with will be holding numbers for us, and we're going to set things up so that when those numbers change, that's when we have our random poses happen. Okay, so since we have that variable set up, we're going to click on New Scene Events. We're then going to click Add Condition. We're then going to see this variables here. You don't want this variables, right? You don't want this. You want to click this first. Then you want to scroll down, and this looks like the same thing. This isn't the same thing. We're going to left click here. This deals with the a variable that works with objects. This is what you want. So you're going to left click here. You're going to click to work with the object of the variable that we're working with. The object is on the player, so you're going to left click there. So now what you're going to do is you're going to click here. You can see the variable there. You're going to click there. For the sign of this test, you want to click equals. And the reason why we're doing this is we're saying when this setting is set to a certain number, we want Gdevelop to do something. And that something we wanted to do is to play a random animation for us. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to enter in 4, and then we're going to click OK. Okay, so this is saying when this variable equals 4, we want something to happen. That's something we want to happen is we want to play our random animation 4. So we're going to click Add Action. We're going to go to Sprite, Animations and Images, and we're going to go down to change the animation by name. We're going to left click here. The object that we want to work with is our player, and the animation name is R4. So we're going to hold shift, put in quotation, R4. The reason this needs to be put in quotation is there's certain things in Gdevelop where it knows the words that you're using is meant to be used with Gdevelop. We made up this name, so because this is our name, we need to put it in quotation. So that's why it's quotation, R4, quotation. So now we're going to click OK. Okay, so what's going on here is we're saying when this variable, which is a container of information, we're using this to hold the information of numbers. When this variable is equal to 4, we want this to play the animation, a random animation 4, right? By default, the variable is set to 0. So if I preview, I'll click preview. We just see our idle animation because this is the animation that plays. Just because that's the first animation, our variable is set to, currently our variable is set to 0. So that's why we're not seeing the random animation. Okay, there's a lot of different things that you can do in Gdevelop using variables. However, one of the things that can be frustrating is if you don't know what the variable is saying at a particular time, that can be difficult. So we're going to set it up so you can see the variable that you're working with. So for instance, I told you the variable is equal to 0. And when this changes to 4, we'll see this random pose, but you can't, there's no way of knowing that really. So we're going to set it up so you can do that. So how we're going to do that is we're going to go to this, add a new empty event. We'll click the plus button here. Okay, so we're going to go back to our new scene. And then what we're going to do is we are going to add in another object. We're going to click plus, and we're going to add in a text object. So we have this object name here. We're going to name this text. For the size of the object, we're going to change this to 150. And then as this is, we're going to click apply. We'll left click on the text. It's highlighted blue. Now we'll left click and hold and drag this out. So here's our text right here. Then I'm going to left click to go off of that text. Okay, so why do we have the text here? The text is going to make things easier for us to work with the variable, as we'll have an idea of what's going on with that variable as we work through this tutorial. Okay, to set this up, we're going to go to New Scene Events. I want to give credit to Sparkman. He's a YouTuber who has a bunch of different tutorials on his YouTube channel. One of the subjects he deals with is Gdevelop. I learned how to do, as far as setting up the text, I learned how to do this from him. So if you want to learn more about this, I recommend you go check out Sparkman's YouTube channel. Okay, I told you that as far as conditions, that the condition says when something happens, the action says what to happen. We want to leave this condition blank in this case because we want this action to happen continuously. So what we're going to do is click Add Action. We're going to look for Text Object. So here's the text object. We're going to left click there. We're going to go down to where we see Modify the Text. So we're going to left click there. We're going to select our object, and we named our text object text. So we're going to click that. For the modifications sign, we're going to click here, set this to equal. And then for the text, we're going to click on this blue button. We're going to click on Common Expressions for all objects, variables, objects variable. We're going to click Object. Even though we're working with the text object, we want to have the text display the variable of the player. The purpose of working with this text to show the variable is so that we can see what the object the variable that controls our is going to control our random poses. That variable is on the player. So with that being said, we're going to left click on the player. So now for the variable, we're going to click here. This is the variable on the player. So we're going to left click here. Then we're going to click done. And now with that done, I just left click to deselect that. Then we're going to click OK. Okay, with that done, I'm going to click on our preview button. You can see that our variable is currently set to 0, so this is useful. So I'm going to click the X button to get out of this preview. Okay, one of the nice things in Gdevelop is we can make use of its copying as well as its pasting feature. So I'm going to left click here. When I left clicked here, it's important where I clicked. I clicked here, so we have this blue highlight underneath the condition as well as the action. See that line right there? Because that line is there, now we can click this plus button. So there's going to be a random pose 3, random pose 2, random pose 1. So when I say right now this is currently empty, however, this is set up so that we'll be able to copy and then paste this event just to make things faster as well as easier for ourselves. Okay, so we're going to, with this highlighted, this blue going underneath both the condition as well as the action, we're going to right click on copy, left click here. So we have this highlighted blue underneath here. We're going to right click, select paste. We're going to do the same thing again, paste, do the same thing again, paste. So I've right clicked and then left click to paste. Okay, with that set up, that saves us some time because now we can click here. We don't even have to, we could double click and go into the deeper version of the settings. However, we can just come here, change this to what we need, which is 3. Click here, we'll change this to 2. We'll click here, we will change this to 1. By the way, the order that I have these set up doesn't need to be in this order. That's just me choosing to do things that way, just in case you were wondering. So now we're going to just change this to match the number there. So we'll change this to 2, since on the other side there's 2. We'll click this and change this to 1. We have these things set up now. Let's set up so our character can move. So to do that, we're going to click Add Condition. We're going to go to Keyboard. We're going to select Key Pressed. And for this, we're going to click here. I'm going to hold Shift and then press R. Type in right. So I'm going to left click on right. And it's important that this doesn't say invert the condition here. This should look how it is here. Sometimes I'll hit this by accident. So this is how things should look. I'll click OK. So the condition says when you press the right button, do something. So now we need to set up what's done. So we're going to click Add Action. We're going to look for Platform Behavior. And we're going to go to Controls. And we want to select Simulate Right Key Press. We want this done for the player, so then we'll click OK. Okay, when you're programming things, most of the time you have to tell whatever you're programming almost exactly what to do. Gdevelop makes things easier for us than that. However, we still need to tell it what to do. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is we need to tell Gdevelop when to flip our character sprite. So what we're going to do is we're going to click another action. So we're going to click Add Action. We're going to go to Sprite. We're going to go to Effects. Then we're going to go to where we see this flip the object horizontally. We're going to left click there. We're going to select Player. And then what we want to do is we're going to select No for flipping. So when our character is facing to the right, it'll move without flipping since it's already pointed to the right. Okay, now we need to set things up so that when we press the right key that that Gdevelop knows that we want the walking animation to show. So we'll click Add Action. We'll go to Sprite, Animations and Images. We'll then go down to change the animation by name. We'll click the player since that's what we're working on. Since this is a name that we chose to make, we're going to put quotations around it. So I'm going to hold shift, put quotation. The name of the animation was walking. I'm going to hold shift, put quotation. Then with that done, I'm going to click OK. Okay, we need to make sure that when we're pressing right, the Gdevelop knows we don't want to have a random pose animation show. So the way we can do that is by having our variable be equal to 0. So I'm going to click Add Action. I'm going to go to Common Expressions for All, go down to Variables. I'm going to select Modify a Variable of an Object. I'm going to select the player. I'm going to click here, select the variable that we're working with. We're going to click Equal, and we want to make this setting be 0. So then we're going to click OK. Okay, now what's cool is we did all this work for here. We can copy this for when we press the left control key. So we're going to go to where we have this all highlighted blue. See, it's blue there, blue here, right? We're going to right click, select copy, left click, so this is highlighted blue, right click, select paste. Okay, so what we can do now is we'll double click here. We'll change this to left. We'll click OK. Where we have this flip horizontally player no, we'll click here. We'll change this to yes. And then this is set up. We're good to go with programming for our left key button. Okay, let's test this out. So I'll click the preview button. You can see that our variable is 0. So, I see. So we do have to change another thing. So when we press our buttons, they almost work. For our left button, we have this simulate pressing right, which is the same as here. We need to double click here. Change this to simulate pressing the left key button. We'll click OK. We'll click preview. So now we can see our character walks like they're supposed to. However, I'm not pushing the buttons and our character is still moving. So we need to fix that. Okay, that's pretty easy to deal with. We're going to left click here, right click, select copy, left click here, so this is highlighted blue. We'll right click right over to add condition, select paste. We'll go to our left key press, we'll right click, select copy, go to this condition, left click here, see how it's highlighted blue. We'll right click over it, right over where we see add condition, we'll right click, then select paste. Okay, now with that done, we'll go to see what it says, set animation of player to walking. We'll right click, select copy, right click, select paste. Same thing here. We could just copy it. I'm just choosing to go here, copy, paste. So we have this set up. We need to change this so that this is, instead of key is pressed, we need to have this say when the key is released. So we'll double click here. See where this says key release, we'll left click here. Make sure that this condition is not inverted. We'll click OK. So now this says right key is released. Okay. So now we need to do the same thing here. Currently it's set for press. We're going to left click. So now this says released. Make sure this condition is not inverted. We'll click OK. And now we need to click here and we can change this. I could have went in deeper into the settings. I'm choosing to go here. It's just quicker. So by me typing in the actual name of the animation, Gdevelop knows what I'm referring to, that this name is connected to the idle animation, both of for the action here as well as here. Okay, so let's click the preview button. So now when we walk, our character goes back to their idle animation. We can see that our variable is equal to a setting of 0. Okay, you might be saying, okay, after all that, where's the random poses? Yeah, what are you going to do with that? Okay, we're going to set that up now. So what we're going to do is we're going to click here. So this is highlighted blue. We're going to click this plus button. And then what we're going to do is we're going to click add condition. And what we want to do is set up a timer. So we're going to click timers and time. Then we're going to select value of a scene timer. Now we have our time in seconds. I'm going to choose this to be 8 seconds. And then for the timer's name, we're going to make up our own name. So I press quotation. So I'm naming this pose, capital T, timer, then putting a quotation around it. So this is our pose timer. I'm going to click OK. Okay, so this time is actually going to be the time in between each random pose. So what we need to do now is click Add Action, go to Common Action for all objects, scroll down to Variables. We need to select Modify a variable of an object. The object that that has the variable on it is player, so we select player. We're going to click the variable. We're going to click for the modification sign, set to. For this setting, we're going to click the blue button. We're going to go to where we see random. We're going to left click on random. We're going to go to random integer in range. We're going to left click there. For this setting, we're going to set this for 1. For this setting, we're going to set this to 4. Then we're going to click done. I'm going to left click. Now I'm going to click OK. Okay, so basically what's set up is every 8 seconds, the variable is going to be changed to equal 1, 2, 3, or 4, right? When that variable is changed to 1, 2, 3, or 4, the animation that goes along with the number that it's set for is the animation it's going to show. Now we do need to add one more thing, and what that is we need to make it so that this timer resets. So this happens, and then once this happens, that the timer then resets. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to click on Add Action. We're going to go to Timers and Time. We're going to scroll down to where we see Start or Reset a Scene Timer. We're going to enter in the name of our timer, which is Pose, capital T, timer. Then hold Shift to put a quotation in. We'll then click OK. Okay, so when we press right or left, our variable will be set for 0. There are no poses that are set for 0, so we should be fine as far as walking to the left as well as the right without having to have a random pose try to override the animation of us walking to the left or the right. For the most part, when we let go of right or the let go of the right key or left key, we'll go to an idle animation. This timer is running in the background, so for the most part, you'll go to idle. If you let go right as the timer is approaching to a change, you might go right from an idle right to a random pose. Okay, I'm going to click on the preview button. So when I push to the right, we walk to the right, left, right, left. When I stop, we go to our idle pose. There's our first random pose. There's another random pose. Another random pose. Another random pose. Now when I push to the left or the right, we go right back to walking, then right back to our idle pose. Okay, as far as different games, I really like the different random idle poses they have. I think that random idle poses tend to give a lot of personality to characters in games. Uh, yeah, I like this technique, and I like how easy Gdevelop generally makes things just easy to do. Okay, guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who like the videos on this channel and reshare them, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel, you would like to see more, please subscribe, and thank you for viewing.